One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice. One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice. One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice. One mic, one voice.
Welcome to the One Mic, One Voice show, building the collective conscious, a show that is created to give space where your voice, ideas, and informed opinions can be heard, appreciated, and yea, debated. I am Michael Eric Owens.
And I'm DT.
Hey. Hey, we did something a little different, man, to start the show. We went live.
Had a little chatter before the show started.
So, folks, hey, listen. Once we go live, just tune right in because, we are, one mic, one voice. And we also posted on our, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, our YouTube channel. So you can catch all our shows there. They can just pop up right away. Probably you got a notice even about this show. So not only listen, but subscribe and encourage your friends to do the same, right?
That's right.
And plus, do a little comment. We like all comments. We really like the positive ones, though. I'm just saying.
But we don't shy away from the negative ones, too, because like you said, this is a place where your voice can be heard, appreciated, but yet debated. Inform opinions.
So make sure you do your homework. Folks, this is 101. Episode 101. We on the other side, D. And our title today is The Price of Race in America. The price of race in America. We're going to get deep into this thing. But I want to, can we do some 45 and down the road?
Buckle up your seat.
Can we do that? Is Richard prepared? He's scrambling now. See, look at he's shrugging his shoulders and everything. He's supposed to be like on point. 45 and down the road. I can tell you what, it's crazy. It's crazy what's going on in our country today. But I want to dig it, man. This guy, Roy Moore. Talk a little bit about this guy. Moore was elected to be to the position of Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in Alabama on 2001, but was removed from his position, D, in November 2003 by the Alabama Court of Judicial for refusing a federal court order to remove a marble monument of the Ten Commandments he had installed in the lobby of the Alabama Judicial Building. He then sought the Republican nomination for the governorship. He ran for governor twice, in 2006 and 2010, but lost in the primaries. Of course, he again won election to the Chief Justice in 2013, but then was suspended for directing the probate judges to continue to enforce the state's ban on same-sex marriages, despite it had been found to be unconstitutional. I mean, that's
defiant.
He's defiant. How did he get back to the court twice? That's where I was confused at, because he has not only has he been accused, and we're going to watch this video here just in a section, but not only has he been accused of sexual harassment and assault, but he has been outspoken. I don't know, recently you heard him just say that he was asked the question, when was America great? And he said, well, during slavery times, He said, yeah, that slavery thing, but families were strong, America was strong. The country had a direction during slavery. I don't know, man. The destruction of the black family, the selling of bodies, the raping of women, I don't think that constitutes, maybe it constitutes a direction to hell, but I don't think it constitutes like strong family bonds when when you are chaining up people, lynching. We didn't talk about the lynching and everything that went on and the beatings that took place,
and
the
all
murder.
unspoken things that didn't get out in books and articles. And
he said he wouldn't debate his challenger, Doug Jones. He said he wouldn't, because Doug Jones, the Democrat, wanted to debate him. He said, I would debate this guy any place, anytime, anywhere.
Bring it
right?
on.
But this guy, Moore, refused to debate him because of he said, his very liberal stance on transgenderism in the military and in bathrooms. What you scared of? Isn't the debate all about standing toe-to-toe with somebody that has a different opinion and worldview of you? Than the one you carry yourself. That's what debate is all about. I don't know what he want to do, debate somebody that thinks and acts and talks and behaves just like he does.
You want to be able to set the stage.
Well, he want
pick the place.
Yeah.
Pick the time.
Yeah. He want to pick the players that he playing against. He doesn't want to go against any level of competition. But folks, I want you, and this goes back. Hold on for a minute. Well, let's run this video, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
Roy Moore in the Alabama Senate race. For weeks, the White House has been asked whether President Trump would travel to campaign for Roy Moore. The president wholeheartedly throwing his support behind Moore, saying, quote, I like a fighter. Go get him, Roy. Tonight, the president is making an appearance not far from where Moore has been campaigning. And while he technically didn't travel to Alabama, he's right across the border in Florida, where many Alabama voters will no doubt see the president on their local news. Here's ABC's chief national correspondent, Tom Yamas, tonight.
Tonight, the president is in Florida, but Alabama is on his mind.
This guy's screaming, we want Roy Moore. He's right.
Earlier, the president tweeting, vote Roy Moore, saying, last thing the Make America Great Again agenda needs is a liberal Democrat in the Senate. But tonight, Moore's own comments about that Make America Great Again message facing new scrutiny. At a rally in September, Moore described a time when he thought America was great, a time before the Civil War. The Los Angeles Times now releasing that audio.
I think it was great at the time when families were united. Even though we had slavery, they cared for one another. People were strong in the families. Our families were strong. Our country had a direction, and we corrected many of the problems.
Moore went on to say slavery was one of those problems. His campaign telling me, of course the judge opposes slavery. This as 8 women accuse him of a range of inappropriate sexual behavior. 2 say he sexually assaulted them when they were teenagers. Beverly Young Nelson tells me Moore attacked her in his car when he was in his 30s and she was just 16.
He was trying to pull me toward in between his legs. It was terrible.
Moore denies all the accusations and denies even knowing Nelson. She says she has proof that Moore signed her high school yearbook, but the campaign says it's a forgery. Today, Nelson acknowledges she wrote the date, name of the restaurant, and letters DA next to Moore's signature. She says she did it to remind herself of who Roy Moore was and where and when Moore signed the yearbook.
But to be clear, Beverly, he signed your yearbook.
He did sign it.
And you made some notes underneath.
Yes.
She says she stands by her story 100%.
Tom Yamas with us again tonight. And Tom, Alabama voters now head to the polls on Tuesday.
Well, Alabama voters have a moral test. Mm-hmm. Okay. This dude like little girls, man. I mean, that you 30-some years old and you going to high school going after girls? Mm-hmm. There's something diabolical about that. There's some debauchery there. There's just something wrong with a dude in his 30s checking out high school girls, man. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's just ain't cool, man. I mean, you in the high schools, you see these young girls, man. You got this 30-year-old professional DA, right? He the DA, right? He knows this is wrong, but he's got some sort of pathological disorder that he can't help himself, right?
And, you hear people from the Alabama area say that thinking about Roy Moore's persona in context with the time was that that behavior was very common back in the day. And in Alabama, it wouldn't be any raise of an eyebrow for anybody to see a 30-year-old man with some teenage girl and think it was a big deal.
I don't think that's true.
Something wrong with that.
Yeah, and I think the guy in that video obviously doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, because I disagree totally with that. Roy Moore, okay, my mother.
But these are supporters of Roy Moore.
Exactly. My mother is older than Roy Moore, right? That would have been, ain't no way a 30-some-year-old man would have been checking out my mother when she was 16 or 14 years old without my grandfather taking care of some business. You understand what I'm saying? There is nothing normal about that. Yeah, did they get married? Yeah, they probably got married to somebody that was 19, not somebody that's 30-something. Come on, man. The world has not changed that much in 40 years. But, D, it's interesting, and we're going to take a break here and get into our topic, the price of race in America. But it's interesting because I took a look at Alabama poll electoral history, just going back to 1980. All Republican candidates for president. Every last one of them. You know the history, okay? Dr. King had his church there. You know the history of civil rights, the fight there. But I was curious to see, how does Alabama match up with Oklahoma?
Probably
Folks,
mirror image.
Since 1980, Oklahoma has voted Republican. And get this, it says here, the state voted Democratic in all but 2 elections through 1948. At that time, the state was ran by Democrats, right? And it says here that Donald Trump defeated Hillary Clinton by 65% to 29%. The 4th consecutive election that the Republicans has won by over 30% in the state of Oklahoma, right? Okay. Folks, we could go on and deal with that, but you take that little knowledge, especially Oklahomans, you take that little knowledge, and when we criticize Alabama for being behind a pedophile and someone that has a history of sexual assault and sexual harassment, let's look in the mirror. Folks, we'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Join us for the annual Ralph Ellison Foundation Gala, February 24th, 2018, 6 p.m. at the Oklahoma History Center. A night of music, dance, poetry, and readings from Ellison's works. Purchase your tickets now at ralphellisonfoundation.org or simply call 405-788-0566. Sponsored by Perry Publishing and Broadcasting, Oklahoma City Thunder, Oklahoma City University, Artisan Fine Wine and Spirit, Fred Jones Foundation, OKC Greater Chamber, Ennis Much Foundation, Full Circle Bookstore, Center for Economic Development Law, The Alliance, AT&T, Pivot Project, Metrotech, Downtown OKC, April Coffin PC, Jason Lowe, and Blacken Studios.
This is Josh K.
And I am Leah Marie.
And when we listen to podcasts, we always listen to
One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice.
Your choice.
This is Dr. Laura Gillette, and when I listen to podcasts, I always listen to the One Mic, One Voice show.
welcome to the adventures of Splackatel, or the AOS podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Buck.
And this is Tony.
And we are a video game podcast giving you all the update video game releases that are coming out that you need to know and the video game news that we want you to know.
Follow us on Facebook, Black and Gaming Network, and Twitter and Instagram at Black and Gaming.
And you can also find this podcast on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play by searching the AOS podcast.
Ooh!
What was that?
That
was interesting.
No, I do appreciate Richard playing the commercial from Dr. Lord Gelada. That brought back a lot of good memories right there.
Oh, man.
Time up in the Wisconsin area. But anyway.
So the price of race in America. Think about this. It's costing something.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a historical cost. But we're going to listen to Warren Buffett, the billionaire, and we're not going to listen to the whole video, but we're going to go to a spot in there that I think speaks to this price of race. We in America, but in our world today. Let's take a listen.
Nice wheels.
Yeah. Well.
So how old is this caddy?
I think it's about 5 years or so.
You'd think the third richest man in the world might have his own chauffeur, but not Warren Buffett. He prefers being in the driver's seat.
Do any of your billionaire friends ever joke with you about the Cadillac and that you're driving and not something flashier?
No, they know me pretty well.
On a cold winter morning, Buffett chauffeured me around his hometown of Omaha, Nebraska, pointing out all the hot spots.
This is the McDonald's I go to frequently.
So what do you have at McDonald's?
Probably 3 times out of 4 I get a sausage McMuffin. But then at lunchtime I get a quarter pounder and fries.
A modest meal for a man worth some $46 billion. His humble tastes have humble origins.
Yeah, well, that is true. It was a Sears Roebuck house, and in those days they called it Sears Roebuck, not Sears.
Buffett took us to his childhood home.
My dad bought it in 1925. He bought it about 2 weeks before he was going to get married. He paid $55 a month on his mortgage.
$55
a month.
A month.
Yeah, on the mortgage.
Buffett since moved, but says his new home is no palace either.
I could buy any house in the world, and I don't want any other house than the one I'm in. You know, and that house is in a middle-class neighborhood. I'm happy in a pair of khakis and a sweater, so I don't need fancy clothes. I don't need fancy food.
Do you have an iPad?
I do not have an iPad.
iPhone?
No.
He prefers books and reads avidly. Even as a boy, Buffett, whose father started a small stock brokerage, devoured anything he could find on money.
I bought my first stock when I was 11.
Which is incredible, that at 11 years old you were buying your first stock.
Well, I would have bought it sooner, but I didn't have the money. It took me about 5 years to save $120.
That was in 1941.
Oh, there I am down at the bottom here.
There you are in this
I'm over
corner.
here, and that's Bob Russell and Rich Olson.
You kind of have like a little bit of a grin on your face.
I must have been thinking about investments at the time.
Warren Buffett, now 82, has vowed to give his money away to charity.
So this is you.
Well, this is me and my classmates.
It's a fortune he's been building since his days here at Rose Hill Elementary School.
When you were sitting here at Rose Hill Elementary, did you think at that point, I want to be the richest man in the world someday?
No, but I thought I wanted to be rich.
What appealed to you about being rich?
Well, I like to be independent. I want to be able to do what I want to do every day, and money lets you do that.
Fortune magazine writer Carol Loomis is a close friend. She's been covering Buffett's career for 46 years. Tap Dancing to Work is a collection of her articles about him.
What would you say is his biggest strength?
Well, his biggest strength, without doubt, is his rationality that he brings to business and investing. And this is a trait, rationality, that you would think many investors would bring to their work. But the fact is, most of them are swept up by emotions most of the time at some crucial time. And he never does that.
If you had invested $1,000 in Buffett's company in, say, April of 1966, your holdings today would be worth $6.5 million.
What role has luck played in your success?
Well, there's luck enters into everybody's life.
And Buffett says that begins at birth.
The womb from which you emerge determines your fate to an enormous degree for most of the 7 billion people in the world. Just in my own case, I was born in 1930. I had 2 sisters that have every bit the intelligence I have, every bit the drive, but they didn't have the same opportunities.
Because you were a man.
And I was white. So if I'd been black, my future would have been entirely different. If I'd been a female, my life would have been entirely different.
Buffett is just as outspoken about...
If I had been black, my life would be entirely different. That is a chilling statement from Mr. Buffett. And I find Mr. Buffett to be a very content person and a very humble person. He's not arrogant. He gives a lot of money to charity. He speaks very, I think, clearly about the problems, economic problems, when it comes to taxation on the middle class and the poor. And to hear him say that, this successful guy that says, if I was not male and white, my life would be completely different. Now, and he also, D, talks about this idea of he wanted to be rich so that he could have his independence, so that he could be free from the constraints, and I'm adding to his thoughts here, of society's pressure. So the opposite of that is being dependent and not being free, right? And the opposite of him not being white, male, his different origin of birth, as he talked about coming out the womb, right? His life would not be the same. The price of race. So what does that say? What do we take away from that?
I have to tell you that when I first heard this clip, I was a little taken back by just the sheer, crucialness and reality that he brought to the table. And when you asked me a question a few episodes back about potential and about whether or not as a black person I feel like I'll reach my potential, and to some degree and with some, personal confidence and arrogance, maybe I said, I think y'all think I'm gonna be everything I'm gonna be. But I mean, and it's still funny because I know that a black life is limited, and so there may be lots of things that I think in my mind that I'll accomplish and that I'll get to, but there will be roadblocks because of the attitudes of some people that will stand in the way on my way there. And so that kind of brings into a kind of a dim light on the situation, but it's the reality because, we've had several conversations about things that happen in history that we see, and if it was a black person, if it was a white person, and how the situations play out as a result of that. And this is the same thing, and we're talking about money. We're talking about the potential to build up an independence. I've never heard any black man say, I can buy any house in the world that I want.
Yeah.
That's like a figment of your imagination to have that type of ambition.
And even if you could say that and you had the money, it's not true. Because there are neighborhoods that you cannot get in. There are communities that will not accept you. So when we talk about the potential aspect of one's life, I mean, this is a cold, hard fact. Now, I know there are people listening to us that will say, you can't say that. You can't discourage someone like that, right?
But yeah, here we are in 2017, the first black this, the first black that.
Is it better for me to lie to you? The very fact that we have to say the first black, the very fact that we have to point to anomalies in the system is a problem. Do we say the first white millionaire? The first white CEO? Do we actually say that? The only time you find the first is when there are, let's talk about the minority, okay, sphere here. When there's a woman that does something, a transgender that does something, a black, a Latino, it's always the first Latino, such and such, right? That is a problem in itself. Why? Because we have all been in this country since the beginning.
But what did you start in the race?
Okay. And I think we'll get to that, right? Okay, when we talk about opportunity. But the reality is, folks, if you don't want to hear it, close your ears, do whatever you got to do. But with systemic racism, with all the challenges, historical challenges that minorities face in this country and worldwide, the stigmatization of black and brown people, the stereotypes, the employment discrimination, with all of those things in the bucket, there's no way a minority person can reach their full potential in this world. Go back to the Harvard study that talked about, it looked at employment, and it looked at how it is easier for a white male, less education, and a prison record to get a job than a black man who is college educated without a prison record. That says it all. I mean, how can you say the black person can reach their full potential when the deck is stacked against them? I don't care how much you maneuver. I don't care how well people, treat you or open doors for you. Systemically, you start back too far, and the obstacles are so great. And we're going to look at that particular side of things. But I this idea of if I had have been born black, my life would be totally different.
I think about that too in context of when it is that black children come into contact with investments or talking about saving money or doing anything that is not having to do with today, because for the most part, we function out of survival.
Exactly.
And there's no surplus and nothing extra and nothing, to look forward to, but the fact that you may or may not be able to eat today.
Absolutely.
And so he's exactly right, depending on who your parents were. And if they were black parents, their focus was on your survival most of the time.
Trying to keep you out of jail, trying to keep you from being killed by the police, maybe. So what?
And it's hard to, and the lady talked about, his biggest strength being rationality and being able to think clearly and being able to use logic and reason. And that's hard to do when you come up in chaos.
Absolutely.
The thoughts are not clear.
Absolutely. What would your life be if you were a colored person, a person of color? There's a pay gap going on, D. Let's take a listen.
When it comes to U.S. retail workers, a new study finds there's a significant wage gap. No justice, no peace. According to public policy organization Demos and the NAACP, black and Hispanic workers are paid less than their white counterparts. How much less? Well, as full-time retail salespeople, black and Latino employees make 75% of the wages of their white coworkers. For cashiers, minorities make about 90% of the wages of their white peers. The study's authors write people of color are overrepresented in the positions with the lowest pay and the least stability, and underrepresented in management positions. Black and Latino retail workers are significantly more likely than white workers to be employed part-time when they want full-time hours. This, according to the study, does nothing to help minority families economically, as 17% of Black and 13% of Latino retail workers live below the poverty line, compared to the average for the retail workforce at just 9%. The study's authors made a few recommendations to lessen the disparity, like reviewing discriminatory practices and increasing minimum wage to $15 an hour. That larger debate is already happening nationwide, from Los Angeles to Chicago to San Francisco and beyond. Critics, however, say a pay increase could lead to increased prices for goods and fewer sales, which could force employers to lay off some workers.
Okay. You talked just a minute ago about investing, right? You talked about investing, about having that knowledge, about looking toward a future. How can you do that when you live below the poverty line? How can you do that when you're making 75% of what your counterparts or 90% of what your counterparts are making? How can you do that, D, when you are in the lowest paying jobs? How can you do that?
It's tough. I mean, even at $15 an hour, 40 hours a week, no taxes, that's only $28,000 a year. And you consider what it costs you to live, what it costs you to eat, what it costs you to function, and that money, you got children, that money started to go away real fast.
So I'm already starting behind. Mm-hmm. I'm already 10 steps behind the starting line. Right?
I mean, you're getting a paycheck, but it's not yours yet.
No, it's not yours yet. It belongs to everybody else, right? Listen, folks, the price of race in America. And this is what I'm trying. Nobody. Let me say this, because our white brothers and sisters, they feel like they're sometimes like they're under attack. When we bring out these sort of topics and we bring out the data behind it, right? And I'm sympathetic and empathetic to that uncomfortable position. I am. However, okay, it is what it is. You happen to be white. You happen to be privileged. You have to be living in a society where the system benefits you versus someone like myself. I know you didn't create the system. I didn't create the system, but the system does exist. And the question for you and me and all of us is, what are we going to do about this system? That's the question. Because I'm paying a price for the skin that I'm in.
Every day.
Every day. Folks, we're going to get deeper into this. We're going to take a break, pay some bills. We'll be right back.
This is DT of the One Mic, One Voice podcast. Just want to let you guys know you can go over to iTunes and search us at One Mic, One Voice, and be sure to rate and review our episodes. Let us know about any feedback that you have and what you enjoy about the episodes. Also, you can go over to Stitcher, where you can get the latest and freshest episodes of our podcast streamed directly to your smartphone or iPad. No downloading or syncing. How cool. Real smooth. Also, we just like to take the time to thank you for your time and for your energy and for spending time with us as we discuss the historical record of our time.
This is Quraysh Ali, Lansana, poet, author, educator, and Oklahoma. And when I listen to podcasts, I'm on that One Mic, One Voice joint.
Welcome back, folks. Listen.
Shot out.
Every time I hear him, the brother is smooth. We're looking forward to your comments. Tell us what you think about this topic. Tell us what you think about our shows. You know what? Become a member. Patreon.com/OneMicOneVoice. Get behind the scenes. Get all the content that we have. We got some nice giveaways, too. Hey, you can even probably get a guest appearance on the show.
Oh, that'd be nice.
So, I'm just saying.
I'd love that for myself.
I'm just saying. I think we're pretty.
You can have me on sometime.
I think we some pretty cool dudes to hang out with. Minus Richard, though. Richard.
You're not going to be saying much, so don't worry.
Richard is kind of like
we'll get him a muzzle
in his own space, like back off, sort of thing. Getting back into the price of race. Think about this. There is a gap, okay, in health, housing, in education. I mean, all of these things are stacked up against people of color. But the education gap is huge. It's problematic. Schools are closing. Kids can't read at their appropriate grade level. If you can't read, how can you succeed?
That was something else Buffett said. Reading was very important.
Oh, man. He said he
ate up everything.
Everything. And I guarantee you his parents encouraged him to read. But when you're trying to survive, a lot of times you don't have the energy to instill these things in your children, right? The heavy load is on teachers. But let's look at this. I want to look at this clip here that talks about, you can listen to it. If you're a Patreon member, you can watch it right along with us. But the gap in education.
The achievement gap is that difference in academic performance and proficiency between African American and Latino and Native American students versus the Anglo or white students.
It's really the difference between black and brown students versus their white counterparts and the academic difference that exists. It's also by income. And in Denver, we know that income and ethnicity are highly correlated. And it's that gap that exists from achievement that starts at kindergarten and doesn't, and while we're doing a better job as a school district, it doesn't ever really close.
The achievement gap, which is also frequently now talked about as the opportunity gap, is the inequity of opportunity that our children have to achieve the same future in their lives. By especially race and class.
And the question behind the achievement gap is why do some students do so well and other students we never overcome their zip code or their parents' income level? Why can't schools make up for that?
It shows up because students who have different socioeconomic backgrounds don't get access to a set of skills or experiences, which means they show up to school, kindergarten, 5th grade, 9th grade, freshman year of college, without the same set of background they would have gotten if they were born a mile to the east or a mile to the west or with a parent that made $50,000 more than their parents make.
There are some individuals who just getting out of 8th grade is enough, who just getting through high school is enough. And then there's another demographic of individuals who are being told graduate school, higher education. And I think the achievement gap that I see comes in the messaging that we give to students.
I think you can also look at achievement gaps around academic preparation, around students with special needs, students who are English language learners. I think there are really important gaps there as well.
A lot of times it has to do with what's happening at the student's home.
I think the achievement gap really starts with what people are calling it now, which is an opportunity gap. So what you see at the end is a reflection of what happens at the beginning of the education system.
The allocation of resources for the schools, the allocation of human resources, the buildings that students are in, even the layout of buildings that way. And so I think all of those different factors go into the achievement gap. And then I think the achievement gap is as well the time and opportunity that our parents have to really be advocates for their own child's education.
The achievement gap is that you as a white middle-class person has to run 26.2 miles. The Latino student has to run 30 miles. The black student who grew up in poverty with the single mom has to run 35 miles. That's really the achievement gap. What's happening is that nobody's showing up at the starting line equal And somehow, at the end of the marathon, is a college graduation or is a great career. Well, they have to make up 10 miles.
When we talk about the achievement gap, which I call an opportunity gap, and the reason I do is because it's not the kids' fault they're not achieving. The blame lies here with the policymakers and others who have neglected to really factor in their achievement as a priority.
Wow. Okay. The gap doesn't ever really close. The gap doesn't ever really close. As he said, the end is a reflection of what happened at the beginning. The gentleman talked about, his analogy of miles to run, right?
And I ran track, so I know.
So once you get to the finish line, if you got to do another 5 miles, that's a little tough, ain't it?
It is.
It's and if you starting off, I remember my philosophy professor, Dr. Longway. Man, that man meant so much to me. Still does. But he talked about equal opportunity. And he said, and this is what he said. He said, it's not about equality. He said, we can be equal. And he used a racer's analogy. He said, we can be equal. He said, but if I start at the same line with Jesse Owens, do I have the same opportunity to win? He said, no, I do not. It's no way. He said, you need to put me halfway up, 3/4 way up, right? And now I have an opportunity to win. That's why we've seen programs like affirmative action and college quotas and all that, because what they were trying to do in essence was to move the minority person up so that they could have the same opportunity to succeed. Because where they are starting at, teachers, understand that when you have minority kids in your classroom, that they are behind already. Now, there's anomalies. I get it. But the majority of them, they're behind. You see this every day. They are behind already. And you must teach them in a way that brings them up to the point where they have the same opportunity to succeed.
And it's going to be tough. Little Johnny ain't no joke sometimes.
You know what? Little Johnny is probably being raised by his grandmother. She's on limited income. He's coming to school hungry. He's made fun of by the other kids. Right? Little Johnny's thinking about maybe even walking through a neighborhood that he feels unsafe in, trying to get home. And when he gets home, he doesn't know what's going to go on because, maybe the sister's there with a boyfriend and he's a gangbanger. What did the one person say? It's the home. Mm-hmm. The home is critical, right? Go back to Mr. Buffett. The womb in which you come out of determines a lot of your fate.
Let's look at the numbers real quick, Mike. So talking about the gap, we see here that the divide between the wealth of a typical black family and a typical white family today is vast. A median black family has just $1,700 in wealth, total assets minus total debt. 30 years ago, that same family has $6,800 in today's dollars. Latino families at the median have similarly small assets, just $2,000, and also saw a decline over the past 3 decades, or would wait.
Gets better.
Our white median household wealth, meanwhile, is significantly higher. looking at about $116,800, and that's up from $102,000 over the same period.
So while minority folk household values are declining, our counterparts
on the uprise
are looking better and better.
Yeah.
And this is and the one talked about the policy question. It is a policy question, and I would say that a policy is just a synonym for a system, right? Because a system is made up of policies. It's constructed of different laws and statutes and so forth that construct the system in which people then operate the system and are operated by the system. So clearly, we know, even with this new tax plan, that's why this new tax plan is so dangerous, because it's cutting out some of the entitlements that try to do what, D? It tries to help bring people up the ladder, right? It compensates. It compensates for what they don't normally have, right? And to cut those out, we will continue to see this gulf get wider and deeper, right?
Gulf, I like that.
Yeah, but I read that earlier today. So.
Okay, nice.
But you know what I'm saying. So
we're readers,
right? So what I'm saying, this is what we're dealing with. This is why it's relevant. This is why today, in today's society, we need to continue to talk about race and our problems that we have, and to ignore it simply makes our country worse, right? And, again, we're all part of the solution. But, D, what is this preoccupation with skin color?
I had a friend send me a text this past week, one of our listeners, and he asked me, when did the first slave trade happen? We know that there have been slaves forever throughout the history, but when was it about race instead of economics? In my view, that those things have been one and the same for the beginning of time.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. What, slavery, oppression, power, subjugitude, why do those things if there is not at the core of that idea some sort of superiority, right? So I'm better, I'm smarter, more capable, and I will use you for my benefit, right? Just like that crazy clown Richard Spencer said that a guy was, I posted on our One Mic page, this guy was interviewing him, this black British guy was interviewing him, and he said slavery was good for black people because black people would be doing, they're doing much better now than what they would be doing in Africa. And this British brother was so kind of like taken back by this statement, right? I was going to say something else that Richard would have to bleep out. But this idea that he opposed to him. So what you're saying that for 2 centuries, that if black people had stayed in their own country and worked their own land and built their own economy, that they would be worse off
less happy
than living here or being enslaved here, building a country for someone else. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, but this is a white nationalistic thought.
They've come to save the day. Right.
And this is what I will also say, is that what we have inherent in our policies and in white privilege itself is a white nationalistic thought. In other words, a system that benefits a certain class of people, meaning white people, is white-centric, which is equal to white nationalism, right? White supremacy, right? And until you can get that out, what was that we won't do any better, but what was that just that one congressman of I forget where he was. He talked about how diversity was all wrong. Assimilation is what we need, right? Not diversity. In other words, I don't need what you bring. You just need to be like me. And when he says that, he says you need to be white, right? But even if I tried to be white, you wouldn't accept me because my skin is too dark. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
This is Elijah Bailey.
This is Richard Taplin.
From The Elijah Bailey Show, bringing you all the content that you could ever desire about anime, manga, comic books, martial arts, fitness, and more.
You can find us at Elijah Bailey Show on the official Facebook page, and also Elijah Bailey Show without the W on Twitter and Instagram.
Make sure to follow, subscribe, like, comment, and rate on iTunes and Podbean.
All right, folks, listen. This preoccupation with skin, I want you to take a listen to how this affects those clothed in this darker skin.
It's something that I don't usually talk about because I'm afraid that I'm making people uncomfortable. It's something that affects me in almost every aspect of life.
There's something about having dark skin on a woman's body that shapes the way she moves through the world. There's something about having darker skin on a male body that shapes the way in which he moves through the world. It has real life stakes.
From what I've seen growing up, dark skin equates to being poor, dirty, ratchet.
They tend to be the bad guys in Tyler Perry movies.
Straight from the border.
That doesn't even make any sense. I'm not deemed as beautiful, therefore I am not beautiful. And those two are not really mutually exclusive.
Could it be that something as early as colonization or slavery is primarily responsible for our beauty standards today? We're talking about who works in the field and who works in the house. We're also talking about rape, the rape of slaves to produce people who are known as mulattoes or mixed race. These standards of beauty travel. Eurocentric standards of beauty travel.
In the Dominican society and our culture, they have a phrase that's like mejorando la raza, advancing the Dominican population and making sure we're going into how they say the better. If you're lighter, you're bettering the race and you're bettering the island versus if you're just being you.
I would get called the blackness. One joke that really stuck with me was like, oh, Edgar's so black that when he leaves a car, the check engine light turns on. That was a reference to my skin being as dark as oil. I felt ugly being of a darker skin tone. So I tried to gel my hair, or I started listening to skater punk music. So I tried culturally to lighten myself, if that makes sense.
I went on a trip to Korea with my mom. Some woman walked up to my mom and she asked, "Why is your daughter so dark?" In Korea, you have to be pale, and I almost felt like a foreigner and not so much Korean anymore.
When we turn off the lights, they say, "Oh, Salorm, where did you go?" Or, "Oh, you're really pretty for a dark-skinned girl." Are you saying that my race and just the fact that I am black, is that not attractive in general?
I remembered one time that I wanted to be an angel in a parade. At that time, they were like kind of racist, you know, they didn't like black people to be angels. And my mommy got kind of freaked out. She was going like, "Please don't, you cannot be an angel because they're gonna laugh at you." I said, "But mommy, I am an angel." And finally, I was an angel. And I was the only black angel walking in the street. And my mommy was so proud about it, and I was proud too.
My mom started buying me a cream called Fair and Lovely. I was in 3rd grade when I started using bleaching creams. And the whole general idea was, if I'm lighter, I'll have a better life. I'll find somebody that's gonna love me. There would still be light and dark patches on my body and my face. It's painful, it would hurt, and I started breaking out in like bad rashes. And no one said anything. I had to stop it myself.
How do we fix this? we think critically about colorism. We think about where it began and where it begins and ends with us.
I think change starts with providing more diversity. Providing more examples of people that look like you.
If you look at telenovelas, they usually cast the dark-skinned person as the villain. And if you never met a Latino before, you're gonna somewhat think that.
So in Japanese media, I honestly don't think I've ever seen a darker-skinned female. I feel it would be nice to see a change.
It needs to start within our own culture, where we can't have Will Smith filling in every slot for black people. Giving dark-skinned people roles that are not only supporting roles, but leading roles.
I mean, a legit, badass 007 Latino James Bond, that'd be pretty dope. I'm just saying.
If I could give a message to someone like me,
who's kind of looking at himself and feeling insecure.
Just know, baby, you beautiful.
Believe in yourself.
Just be you.
You are perfect just the way you are. That's something that no one has ever told me.
And your skin color is a gift. It's never been a blemish or a problem.
When you grow up and you look in the mirror and you're proud of who you are, it will make sense and all the other voices will go away. And all that's going to be left is you.
How many people in the world are experiencing this? Mm-hmm. This was an international, perspective. It was not just America. It was from all different types of countries and cultures, and we find that darker skin is viewed similarly around the world, right?
Right.
So understand that people are grappling with this at a very primal level with their humanity. That's what it saddens me to know that people are looking at themselves and they have taken what the world says or the inability to move up through this system, and they say, I hate myself or I don't like myself because I'm not white.
It's really sad, man. It's man. I mean, I see this all the time because, kids, even at an early age, are now distinguishing themselves, light skin, dark skin, like the jokes I hear all. It's normal almost that even at a young age, that's how you distinguish yourself from your peers or from people who, may be less than or whatever. And it's really sad to see kids having to deal with that at such a early age.
And then the lack of confidence and a lack of self-esteem, poor self-esteem, that this type of language, and we get back to that because we've talked so much about language on the open mic show. The One Mic show. We talk so much about language on our show that it's true. And
you get other folks who are monetizing your insecurity.
Absolutely.
Selling you a skin lightening cream or something to, disguise yourself.
And making your kid use skin lightening cream. Man, you know what? Let's wrap up. I want to wrap up this video here with Greg Popovich. If you don't know him, he's one of the greatest coaches that have ever coached the game of basketball. He coaches San Antonio Spurs. He's a 5-time champion, coach with them. He's a white male, can be blunt, but he was speaking, in my view, about the price of race. Let's take a listen.
Well, I don't think about some platform that I have. I'm an individual. I live in this country. I have a right to say and think what I want. It's got nothing to do with, my position. If it helps somebody else think one way or the other about something, great. But the discussion has to take place. It's obviously, race is the elephant in the room, and we all understand that. But unless it is talked about constantly. It's not going to get better. People get bored. Oh, is it that again? They pull an erase card again. Why do we have to talk about that? Well, because it's uncomfortable. And there has to be an uncomfortable element in the discourse for anything to change. You know, whether it's the LGBT movement or, women's suffrage, race, it doesn't matter. People have to be made to feel uncomfortable, and especially white people, because we're comfortable. We still have no clue of what being born white means. And if you read some of the, recent literature, you'll realize it really is no such thing as whiteness. But we've kind of made it up. That's not my original thought, but it's true. And it's hard to sit down and decide that, yes, it's like you're at the 50-meter mark in a 100-meter dash. And you got that kind of a lead. Yes, because you were born white, you have advantages that are systemically, culturally, psychologically there. And they have been built up and cemented for hundreds of years. But many people can't look at it. It's too difficult. It can't be something that is on their plate on a daily basis. People want to hold their position. People want the status quo. People don't want to give that up. And until it's given up, it's not going to be fixed.
I've been doing his homework, huh?
I think he listened to our show before we had it, because he summed up what we've been trying to say here in episode 101. This idea of we made up this idea of whiteness. We created a system that buttressed these ideas and these policies, and then we place it in the operation, right? And then for those that are benefiting from it, not all of them, for a segment, we ignore it as if it doesn't exist because it's too difficult, as he says, to look at. Because if we look at it, it's uncomfortable, right? It's painful, right? But he says something, not to the person of color. He says something to our white brothers and sisters. And hear me out. Until you give it up, nothing will change. Until you give up your privilege, until people of color are not paying a price for the skin that they are in, nothing will change.
One of my immediate thoughts is that, I know that can be very uncomfortable, even having this conversation with other white friends of mine. Because we have a relationship, it's not that, they're so quick to get on the defensive, but even in having a discussion, it's tough because you can see the wheels turning, maybe some that hadn't turned before. And even like Pop mentioned, a lot of people who are white don't even understand what that means just yet. And so now that we have literature and things that come out about white privilege, as more people get more socially conscious about who we are and what's going on, it's a good sign that people are starting to, kind of get that sense of self and a sense of, what's really happening. But a lot of people are just in the dark and coming completely from the dark into even a little bit of light is like, my eyes hurt too much, man.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that.
It's frightening. It's frightening because when you become knowledgeable of something, then there's accountability. When you receive the truth, you have to do something. You can reject it, but if you accept the truth will change you. The good book says the truth shall set you free. It is this revelation of privileged status that many of our white brothers and sisters have a fear of embracing and understanding and getting to the point where they relinquish that and begin to talk as we talk, right? Begin to have the hard conversations with their families, with their friends, with their students, with their co-workers. They become advocates for the truth, not the advocates for black liberation or minority liberation. You become advocates for the truth. Just tell the truth. Just tell the truthful narrative, because history will speak of us. Somewhere in the distant future, a scribe will reach down deep into the archives of our time, and what will she find? Will she discover that we overcame our differences? Will she find that out of many we became one? Or will she find that we solved nothing and remain a divided peoples? Yes, history
will speak of us.
We can make a difference if we try. We can be the change that's in our lives. All we gotta do is work together. We gotta raise our children better. We gotta stop the hate, and spread the love.
One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice. One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice. One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice. One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice.
Today's broadcast is being brought to you by Blacken Studios. To learn more about Blacken Studios, please visit them at blackenstudios.com or visit them on their Facebook page, Blacken Studios. Today's broadcast is also being brought to you by Perry Publishing and Broadcasting. To learn more about Perry Publishing and Broadcasting, please visit their website at perrypublishingandbroadcasting.net. The opinions of the One Mic, One Voice show do not reflect the views of Blacken Studios or Perry Publishing and Broadcasting. Thank you for downloading the One Mic, One Voice show.
Thank you for downloading this episode. If you're on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, Google Play Music, or whatever podcasting library you're listening to this show on, please rate and review. Those reviews and ratings help us tremendously. We thank you.